with us, and you're in on a cosmic adventure for the next half hour or so, because we're studying today the Zodiac and the Bible, and we are looking at the great planet Uranus. And we've been talking about Uranus over the last few weeks, and the effect that Uranus has as it moves back into Aquarius. It's an amazing thing, you know. We're not doing any fortune telling up here. We're just telling you the way it is. It's a fact. You are influenced by these things. And talking about Uranus and how the changes it makes. I mean, it's strange things like the NASA space shot showed that the part of Uranus that faces the sun is colder than the part that doesn't. And just an amazing, it just upsets the status quo to such an extent. And Al, I guess it was Al that brought this over to the house the other night. It's interesting. Halley's Comet flare-up baffles astronomers. And just to make it, without reading the whole thing, but they say that the Halley's Comet is measured its brightness at more than 1,000 times what the comet was expected to show. And they don't understand what's going on. Another place, they measured it almost 300 times brighter than the comet was supposed to be. And guess where they spotted it? Midway between Uranus and Saturn. And it has picked up a tail that is 180,000 miles long.
Oh, come on.
I'm not kidding you. 1 + 8 equals, here I come, ready or not. You know, isn't that sensational? And they said this is, we've never seen anything like it. The European Observatory said, somebody said, well, maybe a piece of space debris hit the comet. The European Observatory said the chances of an object hitting this Halley's nucleus seemed extremely remote. And it is hard to see how such an event could lead to the relatively steady outflow of what is observed from this. They haven't the slightest idea. But it is hanging around Uranus, and it's happening. Isn't that amazing? And you can look at this. It's right here. See. Uranus. But what we're looking at, last week, if you remember, we looked at the effects of this, the movement of this planet, and the effects it has with people who would be in the sign of Cancer. And tonight we're looking at the effects that it can have on people who are in the sign of Gemini. But what do you want to call it that? How about that, the New Age Gemini? What Gemini basically represents is consistent with many of us, a mind that never stops. A mind that never stops. But when Uranus starts to move and enter into Gemini, there will be coming through the heads of people who are in this ideas of new forms of communication, interest in new ways of healing, interest in new ways of raising children, and interest in involving themselves in a revolution in education. People will start to feel this. They'll want to get involved. They'll want to get involved in things that they never got involved in before. And basically, you people who may be in Gemini will find yourself liberated from the opinions of others, because that's what's held you back. You'll finally know truth. You'll finally know within yourself what's true. Just as when you come here, you finally know. In John 8:32 in the Bible, Jesus Christ said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. In other words, what happens to you is that Uranus and Gemini brings a renaissance. Old opinions that you've had all of your life are going to give way to a new truth. Old opinions are going to give way to a new truth. You're going to find yourself getting involved in new ideas of religious thought, new ideas of scientific thought. Things are going to become new to you. And another thing that Uranus is going to do for the Gemini is finally you're going to be able to listen. It's going to make you a better listener, because one of the problems that you've had is you've never been able to listen, because when the other person was telling you something, you've always been plotting and planning what you're going to respond before he ever, so you never heard him. You're always thinking up what your answer is going to be before you've actually heard what his question was. And all of a sudden now you're going to find, because of your meditation, because of the slowing down of the mind and the consciousness, that you're going to be able to listen. And as you be able to listen, you're going to be able to understand. A better listener, a stronger understanding. And what happens here is extremely interesting. It's extremely scientific. What happens here is Mercury, Gemini, and Uranus all correlate to something that you all know very, very much, and that's electricity. Electricity. The cause of intelligence is electricity. Your brain functions through electricity. And Uranus is the projected electricity. It's the son of heaven, the light of the world, if you would. And Mercury and Gemini correlate to the lines that this electricity is projected through. It's circuitry, and electricity is channeled as it comes down, and it's channeled through the human brain, and that's the circuitry of the human brain, the most magnificent receptacle of that which is electricity, and the conductor of electricity. So there's the forms that Uranus projects through and uses, and this is part of the reason why things change within you, because your brain is electricity, and Uranus is electricity, Mercury's electricity, Gemini's electricity, and these things affect you as you open yourself to them, and there's changes in the constitution of your brain. Now, Albert, you can follow along, but the human brain, in order to function, is dependent on the production of something that's called dendrites. He's shaking his head, yes, I'm okay, I can continue. Okay. Now, dendrites is a branching tree-like energy. It's a branching tree-like energy. Okay. And it is a crystallized form which conducts impulses to nerve centers in the brain. You've got to have dendrites, see. Well, Uranus activating in Gemini has a unique power to evolve the brain in an accelerated production of dendrites. See, all you're hearing this sounds like some kind, you come into a space thing, or you're hearing some kind of a science. You're not. All you're hearing is religion with the holy words taken off, so you don't understand what the heck they're talking about. All you've ever read in Bibles has been this covered over with symbolic terminology of how this works. You know, you are the light of the world. How are you the light of the world? Because the activation of electricity produces these dendrites, and you begin to understand things that you never understood before. But you never knew that it had anything to do with Uranus and Gemini, so what the heck, you walk around, you don't get involved. Now all of a sudden you get involved, you can open yourself to these things, you can move with the flow, and you can allow the electricity to come in, it circulates through the brain, produces these dendrites, and all of a sudden you become an understandable person in the ways of things of God. And what happens, what these things do, is they produce insightful thoughts. In other words, you begin to, all of a sudden, grasp the nature of reality. You begin to understand things. You have an interest in things that you never had before. See? Because you've opened yourself to it. You've taken away the control of your ego, and you've opened yourself to this. You've started to flow with the universal aspect, which is, quote-unquote, God. And what happens that, especially Uranus and Gemini we're talking about tonight, people who are in meditation discover a phenomenon. And what we're simply saying, what I'm saying, is that Uranus, as it affects your sign, whatever, will affect you uniquely, and there'll be a tremendous change in the way you think. All you have to do to prove this is look at yourself now, and look at the way you're thinking now, and look at the way you were thinking, say, 5 or 10 years ago. I don't know about you, but I am in no way thinking today the way I thought 5 or 10 years ago. Totally different. And you're the same way. You're the same way. So, what happens then is, as you're open to this electricity, you're open to this information which comes into the brain. It begins to produce these things called dendrites, these nerve cells, and so forth and so on. And new forms ignite, and then all of a sudden you begin to understand what Paul said is we have the mind of Christ. What does that mean? You just can't have the mind of Christ. Well, what does it mean? It means that you begin thinking the way he did. Well, you can't begin thinking the way he did unless something cosmic happens to you. You just can't say, oh, I read the Bible, so I have the mind of Christ. And then you go home and you go in the house and you're a screwball. And you say, well, I said it in church, but, I'm nuts, or I'm freaked out, or I'm all upset. What? I don't have nothing. When you have the mind of Christ is when you have opened yourself to celestial things, cosmic things, electrical energy of these things which God has promoted up in the universe to affect you, and then these things are produced in the brain, and you start thinking over and above the power that you have to think. You're thinking in ways that you're not capable of thinking because these things start filling your head. Dendrites. You didn't even know you had dendrites. I didn't know you had dendrites. I read it. The guy said, you got to have dendrites. How do you get dendrites? You produce dendrites through meditation. Meditation and the forming of Uranus and Gemini cause dendrites to multiply and accelerate and accumulate in the brain. That's what. How do I know this? I don't know this. But the point is you're thinking differently. You're changing. There's something even about you sitting here. What the heck are you sitting here listening to this guy for? Well, look at you looking at television. Why aren't you looking at something religious? What are you looking at this? Because you think differently. So you've been open and you're subjected to these types of changes in your ways and in the methods that you live, and all of a sudden your consciousness changes and the whole thing. Another thing that we talk about when we talk about the scientific thing is here, we have the mind of Christ. Look at how this, we're just skimming the surface. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist. I can't get in and explain all of this stuff. But let's take how this particular type of a thing involves itself in something that many of us talk about and don't really understand that much about, but it's a very fascinating subject, and it's called karma. Karma. The law, cause and effect, if you will. You reap what you sow. What about karma? What about karma? Because it's very important. If you're going to get involved in Uranus and Gemini and Mercury, electricity, dendrites, I don't know, all this stuff's bombarding through. What does it have to do then with your past life, your present life, your future life? See? Because it all has to be in some way intertwined. It all has to affect you in some way. And you have to be able to discuss it. What the ancients or scientists believe who believe in this type of stuff is that by receiving this new information, as these dendrites accumulate, this electricity accumulates, you open yourself to the vibrations that come from universal things as Uranus moves into the position that it's moving into now. When that happens, it precludes you from having to repeat the same things over and over and over again because your mind has been changed, your brain has been changed, and because of that, the karma can be overcome and broken. Because you're new, you're thinking differently. You don't have to repeat the same old stuff over and over again. I mean, think about this. This can be devastating. You go to a Christian church and talk about this stuff, it's devastating. Don't even talk to me about it. This is evil. But what is right? What is holy? What is right and what is holy is, if you have the misfortune of not mentioning Jesus in a proper way and accepting him, you are going to go into a pit of fire forever and ever and ever and never come out. That's acceptable. Right. And you'll not get any argument with Christians over that. That's okay. I'm going to show you a book that was written in the 1700s. It's a children's study on being good. And it talked about the little boy who took 6 pence of his father's money and bought some candy, okay? And he spent the money somewhere, didn't go to church, didn't go to whatever it was, and the boy got hit by a horse, I guess, in those days, and died. And the little boy came before Jesus. And the little boy said, I am sorry for taking my daddy's 6 pence. I didn't mean to do it. It was just this thing that I did. I will never do it again. And Jesus says, but you died without following through on the instructions of the church. And the little boy said, well, you're not going to do nothing to me, are you? And Jesus turned and walked away. And the little boy was next in an oven. In an oven! And it was flames all over him. Okay? And the thing was, you better watch out and obey that. This is a book. I'll give you the publisher's name, the year. This is a book, and the title of the book is Instruction of Religion for Little Children. Okay? But wait a minute. You're shaking your head. You've all grown up with that fear. That's the way these institutions survive, scaring the pants off of you and making you nuts. And then after they tell the little kids that they're all going to be in ovens for the rest of eternity, forever and ever and ever and ever, then they wonder why they got a drug problem. Why are people taking drugs? What would you do? What chance do you have? So then when you come and you talk about this karma, where a person has an opportunity, although they may suffer because of the things they've done, but now they come forth with an opportunity to overcome that suffering that they may indeed have created, but they can overcome that suffering, okay, by raising and activating these parts of the Christ consciousness that will change their brain and lift them above all of that negative karma and all of that suffering. That's evil, see. They don't want to talk about that. They want to talk about the Jesus who is going to walk away and let you stay in a fire pit forever and ever and ever. Can you imagine 24 hours a day you're going to be on fire? But that's okay. That's accepted. But the beautiful part of karma is supposedly evil. Because what? Because this leaves to you the opportunity through that which is within yourself to rise above all of those negative things, all of those bad things that you have put into place in this lifetime or in previous lifetimes, and break them, overwhelm them. See? That's what it is. See? And that's a beautiful thing. And once the change occurs, once you have opened yourself to what God... See, understand something. If God takes these planets and he takes them and he says, okay, now here we go. I'm going to put Uranus over here and Saturn over here and Gemini over here, Aquarius over here. Now, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, enter within yourself, go to the upper room, and bow, you'll run right into that cleansing, purging beauty of God consciousness, which will break this karma and set you free from all of that stuff. Which you have. And another beautiful thing. See, let me just talk for a minute. Talk about karma. I was sharing with Joan, how can you break karma? Let's just say, here's a man in a lake and he's drowning. Now, if the man drowns in the lake, that's bad. That's bad karma for him, obviously. It's bad karma for his children because he has a son home who now has no father. And because the son has no father, there's no discipline in the house. And the son may then turn around and get involved in all bad things, grow up, maybe gets into drugs, starts pushing drugs, maybe sells drugs to your kid. See? Now the man's drowning has created a bad karma for that boy. Now that boy has created a bad karma for your boy. And then maybe your boy gets into it, and it goes on and on and on. How many people can have their lives destroyed because that man drowned? Now wonder if you happen to be standing by, and for whatever reason, you're able to save him and pull him out, and he lives, and they all thank you, and his father, now that little boy has a father and the discipline, and he grows up, and he goes to college, and he becomes a New Age preacher or something. We sure have changed things, haven't we? We sure have interrupted what could have turned out to be disastrous karma for a lot of people, huh? And we have changed it, bang, like that, because of something we've done. Now, in the same way, you take a person, you bring that person in here, that person has got all kinds of troubles because of either something they did, something their parents have done, something that happened genetically in a past life, and all of this karma, and it's all garbage that's laying there, and you bring them into this place, get them to hit the floor, open their minds to the celestial wonderment, which is Uranus and meditation, and they dendrites or whatever happens, the electricity starts to form, and they break all of this rotten negative karma. They're free. They're free. No hell. It's gone. They've overcome it. See? They have not sentenced themselves to hell for eternity because they have chosen to raise themselves up into heaven. And how did they do it? By accepting Christ. See? Not by saying they accept Christ, because the kingdom of God, according to the Bible, is not word, but power. You're going to look it up. Look it up. The kingdom of God is not words, but power. See? But how do you accept Christ? When Jesus Christ says, the single eye, enter within, cast your energies to the right side, and you do it. Then you've accepted Christ. And by accepting Christ, you find salvation. You have broken that karma which is accumulated in your lives and in the lives of other people. See? What's wrong with that? But yet you can't even talk about this stuff to people. You can't even talk about it. You can't even talk about that these things affect. They don't even want to acknowledge that. So what can you do? So then you understand, by breaking this karma, you understand how meditation then fulfills you. And then you'll understand in Romans 12:2. What does it say in Romans 12:2? Be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. How are you going to get your mind renewed? What are you going to do? Listen to him? Going to listen to her? She's going to teach you? What is that going to renew your mind? Your mind can only be renewed from within. This way. And it can't be renewed by studying the Bible. Because studying the Bible without knowing what it's talking about can drive you absolutely nuts. Absolutely nuts. Because there is some bizarre stuff in this book that can lead you to such a depression that you darn near want to commit suicide. I can recite stories from this Bible which are so bizarre. I can tell you of a story of this Bible of one of the heroes who threw his wife out of the door so she could have intercourse with the town. And then when she came crawling back up on her hands and knees in the morning, he took her and cut her up into 12 equal pieces and sent the parts to the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, if you saw it on HBO or Playboy or something like that, you'd say, what a filthy mind. Well, who wrote that? You say. But if you understand it, if you understand the mysticism behind that, it's like Moses Maimonides says, the more bizarre the word, the deeper the spiritual message. Stay there. So how do you get your mind renewed? You get your mind renewed by exposing it to the celestial creations of God in meditation. That's why the most important thing that any person can do is, especially like on Tuesday nights, to be here. And I hate to say that because it always sounds like I'm trying to build a crowd and all that crap, excuse the expression. I'm not. I'm saying for your sake the most important thing you can do if on a Tuesday night is come in here and hit the floor, because you're exposing yourself to that. And this room is just saturated with the vibrations and the frequencies that have come forth from people. So you have some idea how this works. You have some idea how you can break negative karma by meditating, because you are involved in an electrical circuitry that is within your mind, and you can open yourself to the circuitry as it affects the various signs, and each one, we're going to go through each one as we go down the weeks, but as it affects the various signs, and we still got more to do like on Gemini next week. And now you understand how by meditating and open yourself to these things, you can produce things in your brain that can lead you to rise above all of that stuff and actually break the negative karma, because it's old consciousness and old thought. I was saying to Joan, it's interesting that people say about the human mind and what it can do, and what it is. If I was to say to you, just stop for a minute and think about a house that you lived in when you were a little child. Just think for a minute about a house that you lived in when you were a little child. There it is. Now turn around and think about a house or a condo or something that you'd like to retire in when you get to the retirement age. House of your dreams. There it is. You painted a picture. You painted a picture of the past. You painted a picture of the future. Just like that. Right? Just like that, you've painted a picture of the past instantly, and you've painted a picture of the future instantly. Not because of a brain, because of a divine oneness that you have with the universe that's capable of doing these miraculous things. So you can dwell. But you have some idea. So then the nature of the Christ mind is Uranian, if you would. Uranian, because it's going to upset all of the things that even astrology or all of that stuff says, oh, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, the other thing is going to happen. All you have to do is sit down, cross your legs, open yourselves up to that which is Christ consciousness, and nothing will happen other than good. It'll overwhelm everything. You can read every astronomical, every astrological, scientific thing in the world, but once you rise above all of this stuff, you're out of its grips, and you're into the grips of God. Nothing can touch you. See, the power then is electrical energy, which through Uranus impacts on the electrical circuitry of the brain. It's electrical energy that comes from above, impacts on the electrical circuitry of your brain. And it varies depending on your sign. I don't know what your signs are, but it varies depending on you. Don't tell me you don't have different signs. You have different personalities. How many of you are like me? You don't even know me. Some of you know me a little better than others. I can be rather strange. And I don't know all of you, but I'm sure if I was to look, I can take this for a science. You can take an astronomical book and look at these various signs and just have a general way as to the personality of the person who's born under these things, and it's you. Brother, it is you. Not to predict anything, just saying that's the type of personality that will be, and it is. It's absolutely 100% right on. And why? Because that's the unique thing of the intention of universal godliness, is creating that which is individual person, you the individual. See, what the ancients called this, because it's a real force, but it has no real form. And so the way they called it was the uncreated created, the causeless cause. So when you sit in meditation and you hear the music, you're convinced there's nothing happening. I don't see anything. I don't feel anything. Is this never going to end? See? What's going on? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The causeless cause. Ex nihilo. From out of nothing comes everything. And yet you're being subjected to all of this bizarre stuff because you've lifted yourself into that environment, that circuitry. So the nature of thought reflects the Uranian principle. Truth projecting itself outward from the center of the universe into you, and then again being projected from within you out again to somebody else. Here, let's take a look at this for just a second. And I think Albert will like this. I think Albert will like this. See if he shakes his head right. I think he will. Science and God are one. Oh, he not only liked it, he smiled. Oh, scientist. Oh, I say I. Well, I won. Okay. Science and God are one. There is a book, and I'm sure Elise, his husband, knows of this. I think he wrote it. It's called The Tao of Physics. How's it? P-H-Y-S-I-C-A. The Tao of Physics. Tao means way. Way. All right? Very interesting. Because what this does is the Tao of Physics coordinates what can be done, Albert, with telescopes and microscopes, and it coordinates that with the realizations made by thousands of years ago by the people of the East who discovered what can be found by using inner telescopes and inner microscopes. Same thing. And the physicist, as Albert would understand, understands the ancient principle. The macrocosm is the microcosm. The microcosm is the macrocosm. In other words, the macrocosm is that great universe outside, and it is exactly the same as the great universe inside. And what the outside is like, the inside is like, and what the inside is like, the outside is like. Buddha put it this way: if you want to see what your life in the future is going to be like, take a look at what you are now. And if you want to know what your life in the past was like, take a look at what you are now. And you can't change that. Can't change that. You can't change that in the fact that today you may be, oh, Gewalt, this is what I am now. What am I going to be? Next year it's going to be a Gewalt, a mess. I don't want to be anything like that. See? What am I going to do? But tomorrow is a new day. And tomorrow you may launch your love missile and raise yourself into nirvana, and you're new. So it comes back to the scientific fact of the production of dendrites in the brain. We learned a new word, but not one that Albert didn't know. But the ancient or scientists in this believe that dendrites will be produced in your brain when you go beyond the limitations of your flesh. When you go beyond the limitations of your flesh and your carnal mind, these things will be produced. New things are produced within you. Call them whatever you want. But when you overcome the limitations of the flesh, the limitations of your mind, the limitations of your own consciousness, there is the production of things that are new within you. All things become new, as the Bible says. The kingdom of God is within you. Because creation, which is intuitive, in other words, intuition, divine intuition comes from the right brain. Divine intuition comes from the right brain, and the left rational intellect. The left brain is the brain of rational intellectualism. And Uranus, the son of heaven, the son of God, is the force. Okay. Now let me show you this and we'll wrap it up. If you have a force, let's call it Uranus. Let's look at it as if it's the wires, electrical wires out on the highway. That's Uranus. That's the force, okay? Now, that's fine. But you've got to have some way for you to get plugged into this. I mean, you just can't get any electricity if it stays up on the wire. So you've got to have, then, the plug. There it is, the plug. The plug and say the wire coming from the plug. That's Jupiter. Okay. In other words, the way it works astronomically is Uranus uses Jupiter to bring that vibration, that electricity from universal places down to you. Okay, we got it to the plug, but that's no good. Even if you got a wire, you got to have something, so you want to bring it over here to the, I don't know if I can make this. That's not bad. To the lamp. To the bulb. And you want to be able to go over and make the bulb light. That's great. Okay? So Jupiter then makes the frequency. In other words, Jupiter takes that frequency from Uranus and kind of refines it so that it can be used in the human brain. But what's the bulb? Jupiter translates the force, and now the bulb is Mercury. Mercury is the bulb. This is a science. What I'm telling you, and I don't even understand it that well. I'm learning here with you. What? Don't ask me too many questions. I'm just showing you. I mean, I spend my life meditating and studying and all of this stuff, and it's not going to hurt you anyhow. What are you going to, well, I'm going to prove this? What? All I'm telling you is this is what they say. Uranus is the power. Jupiter converts the electricity so that it can be used in the brain, and Mercury takes it and allows you to light the bulb. And all of these things are going to fit. It's going to be very interesting how this works. Very interesting how this works. But you're attached here. You see? You can't. Look at the bulb. Look at the lights around here. You can't just have these lights and have wires hanging down. And you cannot put direct current into these lights. They'll blow them out, wouldn't it? Albert said yes. What do you have to do? You have to take the current, the power, and you have to bring it down and change it to a proper current so that it can touch these bulbs. Then it can be sent into the bulb. And you got to have a bulb. So you got to have Uranus, you got to have Jupiter, and you got to have Mercury. And when the three get lined up, light. Huh? Ah. Go ahead, ask a question. No questions. How can you ask a question? But as we go along, it's really a fascinating thing. All you're doing is finding out how you're plugged into the universe. And I think the interesting thing is Uranus is the power, and our friend Halley's Comet did a flyby and lit up 1,000 times brighter than it ever was before. It picked up a little of that DC or AC-DC, right? Okay. So Mercury is the bulb. It attaches to the plug, which is Jupiter, which brings forth that which is the power from Uranus. Uranus projects through Jupiter to Mercury. And then what happens? What happens? You have no ideas. The light goes on. Ah, I see. Oh, I understand. I'm not talking religion. God forbid. You said you've been to church every Sunday. You go to Sunday school, night school, Wednesday school, Bible study, singing hymns, stained glass, pulpits, all of this stuff. You give money, and you never knew this. You go into your church next week and tell, I found out how it works. I found out how God and Jesus and Mary and Joseph, everybody works. How does it work? Uranus goes through Jupiter, turns the light on with Mercury, and the whole thing is there. Now what are they going to do? They're going to throw you out. And then when you throw you out, you come back here. But they're going to throw you out because they don't know this. See? But think of this. Remember Alexander Graham Bell? He said, wait till I get the idea I got here. I picked this up. The guy in Tokyo is going to say, hello, who's this? I can say, this is Al. Right. Hello, how are you? You're ridiculous. That can't work. How about the two guys in the airplane, the Wright brothers? What are you going to do? I'm going to fly. You're going to fly. See? Can't work. You can't fly. People can't fly. Birds can't fly. People can't. They flew. See? All of the things that everybody says, you're a screwball, you're a nut, it can't be. Put this down in your little book, because that's the way the power comes to you. You know what happens sometimes? Sometimes, watch it now, Mercury gets so overloaded. You know what happens to you? You get confused. I don't know for cocktail whether I'm coming or going here. And you know what's happening? You're going from the right brain to the left brain. You're getting intuition, and then you're going to, I don't know, I got an idea here, I'm not too sure, I think this is right, but maybe it's wrong, bang, bang, off you go, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Gemini, the twins, Pisces, back and forth. It's an overload. It's an overload. And there's a switch back and forth. And this is why it's so important. So what do you do when you have an overload? What do you turn it off for a while? Turn the electricity. Shut the lights out. What's the first thing you do when you start to smell something, the television or the toaster's burning? What do you do? Pull every plug in the house, don't you? Pull a plug, turn it off, and then go to the main switch, turn it off, turn it off, turn it off. That's what Jesus says. Take no thought. Stop it. This stuff running rampant, confusion. You think you know, then you're not too sure. The light goes on, the light goes off. I got a great idea. It wasn't such a good idea after all. All of these things are going on because all of this is happening celestially, universally, and in your brain. And in order to coordinate it and in order to flow in the harmony of it, you've got to leave that which is the lower and go to the higher. That's why it says in 1 Kings 6:8, the door to the holy place is on the right side. And Jesus said in John 21:6, cast your net to the right side. So we get to that point, and I hope that you'll try to remember a little bit about that because it gets interesting. This can be devastating, and it can, I guess, short circuit, I guess it can cause overloads, and I guess it can cause brain damage. But once you make your movement here to the divine place, it now becomes a whole different thing, because now you are in the presence of universal harmony so that all of this is right. What's the difference between you trying to wire your own house with electricity and calling on the power company or a licensed electrician to do it? You know what the difference is? A fire. That's what the difference is. A fire. You want to see me do some things, huh? The difference between putting a molly screw in with somebody knows how to do it and me is a hole about that big. Do you know what I'm saying to you? I have put molly screws in doors. I didn't know. And they come through the other side of the door. Remember, I ruined the door. What's the difference between fixing a leak yourself and calling a plumber? I'll tell you the difference. $192. You missed that. You missed it. I said, what's the difference between fixing the leak yourself and calling a plumber? And Al and Claire in unison shouted out $192. But let me tell you something. One time we had a leak, remember? In our pipe under the sink. I had an idea. This had to stop it. There was no way it couldn't work. I took the hole in the pipe and I put a nail in it. Had to stop it. Well, it made it worse. Joan called her a brother who happens to be handy. I said, don't you dare tell him how that nail got in that pipe. And he was laying over there, with the nail in the pipe. Was there when we got here? I don't know. Found it that way, I guess. Just fix it. You know what I mean? Just fix the pipe.
Tell the origin of the whole thing.
Come over here. You can't talk like that. No, she, oh, don't make me do this. Then she'll say, will you play it back, play it back.
The origin of the whole story is we bought a portable dishwasher because Billy refused to do the dishes anymore, okay? And they said you can't have the hose because of the pressure, the hose son. So he decided that he was going to disconnect the hose. Well, he just cut it. Okay, so then the water was pouring out all over the place. So then he takes the faucet off. He decides that if he takes the central faucet off, that's going to do it. And he put the nail right down in the middle of the faucet. No connection between these two things. So my brother came over. The hose was cut. Okay, we couldn't use the dishwasher.
I think you've gone far enough.
The nail was right in the faucet.
See what I'm saying to you? That's true.
Tell him about the time you and Frank decided you were going to...
That's right. We got one time we had a flat tire. I was with this friend of mine. Wait a minute. And we got the car jacked up, which was an accomplishment. And then we started turning this thing. And the wheel would not come off. I said, there's no doubt that's what happened here, Frank. I says, it has, the heat froze this wheel to the thing. It's definitely not coming off. So he turned it and I turned it. I says, we walked a half mile to a gas station and called a bakery and called a gas station man. This guy drove 3 miles to come out there. We walked back, said, we got big trouble here. The heat from the friction of this has frozen these lug nuts on here. There's no way you're going to get it off. The guy puts it up and he takes it off. I said, you were turning them the wrong way. This is true. It's really happened. It was true. So, we turned it the wrong way. Couldn't get it all he had to do was with his finger went like that, and they all come off. We walked a half a mile. The guy had to come 4 miles. You feel like a fool. But these are the things that you do. And what I am saying to you, it's absolutely awful. I mean, the baby rabbit was this big. The poor thing died because I tried to feed him the milk. Remember? And I've got a nipple in his mouth, and I'm squeezing it to get milk in there, and the thing's milk coming out his ears, and the poor thing died. Well, I'm trying to do these things, Made to what? Yeah. Well, anyhow, those are things. But the point I'm trying to make with you is that that's why you're nuts. That's why I'm nuts. Because Uranus is coming through Jupiter and into Mercury, and you got short circuits in there, your electricity's overloaded, fuses are popping, and all of this stuff's going on in your head, and you wonder, gee, I don't know why I feel the way I do. This is why. Right. So you've got to take it out of your hands, and you've got to go up into a place where there is harmony, and then all of this stuff, it's the same thing as me either putting a nail in a leaking pipe or calling a plumber. It's the same exact concept. Either you're going to try to do it yourself and mess around with this high voltage electricity, or you're going to take it up to the master electrician, to that which is the higher mind, and it works. I'm trying to show you something in a joking way, but I'm dead serious about this. It's the same thing. You're fooling around with coming into your head tremendous energy, and many people can be destroyed by it, go crazy by it, because they have no idea that they've got to, in advance, take themselves up above all of that energy and plug into universal energy where it all comes into a harmony. That's Christ consciousness. And that's just the way it works. You're constantly bombarded by vibrations and frequencies from planets and all of this stuff, and we have no idea it's even going on. So we just go ahead and lead our lives as if this is the way it is, not realizing that meditation is what takes us up and above and beyond all of that and gives us renewed mind and plugs us into universal harmony. So and the rest of the stories were all true. And I could tell you 100 of them. Huh? I had a dock for a duck. There was a duck in the back of our lagoon. And I went out one time with my friend, the same guy that couldn't get the thing off the thing. And we said, let's lower the dock for the duck, because we didn't think, a duck can get up to a dock. But we figured, I said, let's put the dock lower, because the duck was small, and this way the duck can get on the dock. And we worked all morning, lost all the tools at the bottom of the lagoon. Where's your hammer? Everything. Got this dock down. It was, just to the water level. Okay, where's the duck? No duck. The duck scared the duck. The duck left. The man next door was an old man. He looks down the sewer. A block down, there's the duck at the bottom of the sewer. Where's the duck? The duck got scared because of what we were doing to the duck. And so what happens is he goes down and he takes a bucket of water and he pours it down the sewer, and it acted like flushing a John, and the duck comes flying out, right after the...
But in the meantime, everybody in the lagoon...
Everybody was looking for the duck. People were going out into the bay, chartering boats, looking for this crazy duck, and the duck was hiding in the sewer. That's why I'm saying, if you want to be like me, just stay and let Mercury and Jupiter smack you in the head and, put up with it. If you want to find out what quote-unquote God consciousness is about, you go up. Next week we'll